Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. Or if you're not watching this live, welcome to the replay. We're going to get things started in about 10 minutes. It's now back doing this after a 2-week break. So now I have to remember where all the buttons are. It's my most difficult problem. It is windy outside. Look how windy it is. The bird feeder's shaking in the backyard of Messer Studios. We got about 10 minutes till we get going. There is plenty to do today. Got a bunch of new questions. Trying to get everything ready. Thanks for joining us already in the chat room. Getting things ready here. I think I've got everything ready. I've got recordings going. You can see the Cylons are going down here. So those are good. I'm recording on the TriCaster. We're obviously recording on YouTube. We are oh, the website. We need to change the website banner at the top. See, there's always something. Let's do that. And I have to type in a password, really? Have to authenticate myself? Yeah, that's true, because my system was restarted. Have I changed my mind about CISA Plus? No, I have not changed my mind about CISA. CISA is exactly where it was last time I checked in on it, unfortunately. I guess, unfortunately. For better or worse, CISA is plodding along. They will figure it out eventually. My A+ study group is right now, ! Click here to join us, and then /live. And save the changes. Instructions for finding all of the Q&A and all of that is at professormesser.com/live. Look, Alpha just down the street. I got some kin near there, as we say here in the South. I got some kin near there. Okay, how about a camera check? That might be good. Haven't checked those in 3 weeks. That's not true because I've been recording Security Plus up until a couple weeks ago. And I stopped recording Security Plus because I was done. So happy about that. Camera 3. Let's get something on the camera ready to go, shall we? Camera 3, which is my screen showing promo bar, which doesn't help anybody. There we go. How about a bird feeder? So we know that one works. And then camera 4, which is the presentation. How about camera 4 with me in it? There we go. That's a little bit nicer. Or is it? That's the question. That is the question, folks. All right. We've got chats ready to go. See, those UPS and uninterruptible power supply. I was just writing about those. I was just writing some new content about those for an upcoming course. It's a lifesaver. Got to have a UPS these days. Got to. Where else are we going here? What else do I need to have up on my screen? I've got course notes. I've got presentation. Got Socrative. I think that's it. I think that's about it. I don't know if anything else I have to do. Okay. I'm already behind on emails just by starting the live stream. See how that works? Now, is Skype up? We'll get Skype ready to go. Skype is up and running. All right. Well, we have 5.5 minutes until we start. 5.5 before we begin. Is the mic in the right place? So we got the mic right? Is the mic working properly? I need to. It's pretty good. It's not making a lot of noise, so that's good. It's not as squeaky as it used to be. I need to put a little more non-squeak on there. Unsqueaking. Anybody got some gun oil? Just need a little bit of gun oil. Just need a number 9. You'll be fine. Look, I got a notification that I have a study group starting. I guess this is good. Let's check on the tweeter. That'd be something to check on because it'll go off and just went off, as a matter of fact. So will it show up is the real question. And there it is. Boom. I love this stuff that you could set a time and it does the thing and don't have to think about it. There's my calendar. Yep, that's good. There's nothing on the calendar. So what I'm doing today is this. That's the only thing on the calendar. No conference calls, no meetings with people, no interaction with people whatsoever, as it turns out. None at all. I'll just keep it moving. Oh, and I have new toys coming next week. This is an expensive setup, to say it mildly. This is a relatively expensive setup. But isn't it worth it? Really? It's all about the toys you have. But I've got a new iMac coming next week. So this iMac is going away. It won't look any different to you. It'll be exactly the same thing in front of you. Or on the shot. It'll look exactly the same on the shot, although I do have a monitor arm to put on this one. So I'll be able to sort of move it up and around and maybe closer to the camera. So when I'm looking, I don't have to come way over here instead of ignoring you. I don't want to ignore you. But it's been built over time. But we started modestly. We started with a laptop and a computer and garage lights and a camera that put everything on tape that you had to digitize. So it has come a long way since then. Happily. It's sort of an interesting setup. Now I think I've got the right setup for what I want to do. There's not much more to change. There is everything's kind of ready to go now. Because I really had not touched a lot since, I guess, the last study group. Although, as I mentioned, I've been doing other videos, so I have been shooting. I was shooting after that, and then finished shooting. So Security Plus is done. Now we're shifting gears to more Network Plus stuff. We'll get Network Plus out the door, and then at the end of the year, maybe there'll be another A Plus. We'll see. That's the time frame, I think, for the next A Plus exam, which means we'll still be taking the 900 series at this time next year. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Got plenty of that to go through. Going from Alpha to Little Rock, Arkansas. Sounds right, doesn't it? Sounds about perfect. I think I've got everything ready here. Do I need something else? I feel like I need something else. I got my book, got all the props, I got the sound effects, I got the toys. There's no sound effects, not really. I think that's it. I think it's now just a matter of waiting for the clock to hit the top of the hour. I didn't check the weather today. There's definitely not snow. I think it's going to be 70 degrees today here in Florida, the northern part of Florida. Ugh. And I see weather out there. It's supposed to come today. Looks like it may be later this evening. It's hard to tell. It's hitting Pensacola right now. Maybe it'll rain itself out. What's behind it? Okay, well, that's delightful. I wonder if I can bring that up. Let's see if we can do that a minute less than. It's 11:59. Can I bring it up? QuickTime. Haven't done that in a while. New screen recording. And then you specify the screen you want to do. And it's that one. And no, it won't work. I didn't think it would. I had changed some things. So that makes sense. There's some rain coming. You just have to trust me on that. Okay. I believe we're ready to get this thing started. So I think we will. Let's figure out what we want to put on the screen. Let's figure out where we're going after that. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2018 Professor Messer A+ study group. It's the study group we do every month. Here we are again, another month of A+ Q&A. That's what we're going to do during this first hour, is do plenty of Q&A. I'm going to go through questions. You're going to answer those questions online interactively, amazingly enough. It's going to be quite the interesting event. I'm going to tell you how all of that works in just a moment. We're also going to open up the phone lines in the second hour, and we'll just talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. It doesn't have to be A+, but it could be A+ or CompTIA or certification or career or anything else. Are you buying a house or a car? You want to talk about some games? Let's not talk about sports. Maybe not. Maybe that's just a bad idea to have open phone lines. We'll have to find out if that's really such a good idea. I'm able to do these study groups thanks to you. Would not have this entire configuration of live streaming if nobody showed up. So you being here is incredibly important to us, and thank you so much for being here. When we aren't doing live streaming, we're of course creating tons of content and putting it out on the internet. Every minute of every hour of every single bit of my training classes is available to watch online absolutely free. Make sure you always check in. If you like to subscribe and follow people, here's the links for you. ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Facebook. Just type in ProfessorMesser.com/ the name of the social media thing you would like to visit, and maybe I'm there. And if I'm there, you can type in Instagram, and boom, there's my Instagram. So you can try a lot of different things. And I'll check my logs later to see where I should be. Maybe that's what I should be doing. Have something like that. Also, I have offline versions of these courses you're able to purchase. You can find out about those at ProfessorMesser.com/download 901, which is really download for the 901 and 902. And you can learn how you can get your hands on all of those things. Let's turn on all of my connections here so I can see what's going on with you. Oh, by the way, just by watching this, you can earn a continuing education unit. And it's one that is available from CompTIA. There are other people that will accept a continuing education unit like this. All of the details on what's involved with turning that CEU in is on the CompTIA website. I simply hand them out. It's up to you to turn them in. So I'll tell you somewhere in this first hour how you can earn that CEU. So you have to be listening. See, I'm not just handing them out. You have to be listening in to find out the entire process to have this happen. It's very easy. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. The A+ exam is currently the 22901 and the 22902. You have to pass both of them to earn your A+ certification. The 901 and 902 were released on December 15th, 2015. And we know that CompTIA tends to update these about every 3 years. So for all of you wondering, is the A+ going to change? When are these exams going to change? And we think a new version of the exam should be released sometime around December 15th, 2018, which is this year. So in December, you should see probably a new set of exams. CompTIA hasn't said anything yet, but if they stay true to what they've done in the past, that's what's going to happen. That means new exams will be available, but it does not mean that the 900 series exams go away in December. In fact, CompTIA tends to keep those around for another 6 months. So until it could be this time next year, February, March, April, May, June timeframe of 2019, you could still be taking the 900 series exam. And I assure you, people will be taking the 900 series exam at this time next year. So if you're planning to study, start studying. If you're already studying, keep studying. Don't ever wait for a new exam to come out, because by the way, whether you pass the current version of the exams or the next version of the exams, you get exactly the same certification. Certification doesn't have a version. It's just the A+. So don't waste your time waiting. It's good to have that certification in your pocket, doing you some good, having some value. There's 2 exams, of course. The 901 goes through hardware networking, mobile devices, and hardware network troubleshooting. And the 902 goes through Windows operating systems, other operating systems, including Linux and Mac OS, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. You have to score on a range between 100 and 900, a 675 for the 901, a 700 for the 902. I don't know what that means either. I think they intentionally try to make it difficult to understand. I guess that might be something they do, but Those are the scores. Just do the best you can. Don't worry about the scores. Don't let the tail wag that dog. By the way, if you're wondering where you might be able to get some Q&A, I've written 2 books full of Q&A, all original questions written by me, edited by me. So this is something where people want something that has a high quality set of questions. That's what I set out to write. These 2 books are my pop quiz collection PDFs, 1,300 questions between the 2 of them. Multiple choice, performance-based questions. It's a PDF, so it's digital. It's easy to use. You click around. It's something that you might want to consider. They're $15 each, and every dollar goes back to support what we do here at Messer Studios. Thanks for even having a look at professormesser.com/PQC for Pop Quiz Collection. There are also questions online. I take some of these questions from our study groups and I put them online. So those are free. I like those. professormesser.com/popquiz. It's a great place to go to get free questions. They come right from these study groups, but it's been years as we've been doing these study groups. So there's some good things out, hundreds of questions there, I think, for the 901 and the 902. There is indeed. There's a bullet right there. It says hundreds of questions. This is how I know these things, because I write it down, because I'm incapable of thinking on the fly, apparently. Let's write everything down. If you like watching the live stream on video, but you like to travel, maybe you'd prefer listening to a podcast. So a podcast of these live streams is available as well at professormesser.com/podcasts. That's also free for my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. I got 3 separate RSS feeds that you could subscribe to. They are all on that one page, professormesser.com/podcasts. Okay, enough of the announcements and going on. Let's talk about what we're doing today. We're going to do Q&A. And the Q&A that we're going to do is all online. So you get to participate if you're here live. If you're watching on the replay, you can't participate. This doesn't work very well. But this is something that can be watched on and followed along with on this service called Socrative. If you'd like to participate, you go to professormesser.com/QA. Just pop open a new browser window, and there it is. That's an easy way to do it. There's also an app that you can have on your mobile device. This is the Socrative Student app. It will ask you for a room name, and the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. So that may be something to also think about doing. Let's now shift gears. I have a sample question there. Let's see if you really are able to get into Socrative and answer these questions. The question is, which port and protocol would be commonly used to share files in Mac OS? This is a rewind question. So if you were here last month, you may know the answer to this one already. If you were here last month and you can't remember the answer to this one already, this will be a refresh for you. But you should be able to go to professormesser.com/QA. You will see that question on your screen. And you'll be able to answer A, B, C, D, or E. A is UDP 161, B is TCP 443, C is TCP 548, D is TCP 389, and E is TCP 445. So you should be able to see a number of people already chosen. 55% of folks have said TCP 548. Now I don't even have my highlighter up to be able to show you this. Now we do. So now I can show you TCP 548 is winning at 59%. But is that really the right answer? I wonder. We'll have to figure that out to be able to use that. Now, if you can get to this page, you can see the question, you can answer these, stay right there, because the questions will change on your screen after you answer them. You don't have to go to another website. You don't have to close this out and bring it up again. Just stay right where you are, and you're doing just fine at being able to answer these questions. AFP, by the way, is the Apple filing protocol that's used to do the file sharing in macOS. It uses TCP 548 in conjunction with a service location protocol at TCP and UDP 427. On the macOS operating system, you can pop something up. It will show you all of the available locations that you can connect to. That's what that's referring to. So 548, TCP 548 was indeed the right answer. So you must have remembered, right? You must have had an inkling from last month. Maybe because we didn't do very well on that one last month, as I recall. I try to get questions that are a little bit more challenging when working with these. So let's Let's see if we can answer some of these. Let's jump into this and just do some exam Q&A. I've got other questions ready to go. Whenever you sit down for your A+ exam, whether it's the 901 or the 902 or the Network Plus or the Security Plus or really all of the major CompTIA exams, the very first questions that you get on the exam are not multiple choice questions. If you walk into that exam thinking you're going to choose A, B, C, and D for everything, you are incorrect. You will need to readjust your expectations because the first few questions are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be asking you to put things in a particular order. It might be a matching type of question where you have to match A to B or one side to another. Maybe there's a picture and you have to match the picture to the explanation. Or it might even be a question that pops you down to a command prompt and says, please perform this function at the command line, and you have to know how to do that. So that's why I tell you it's important not only to study the topics on the exam objectives, but get some hands-on, because that first section of the exam really is trying to get you to think about things other than a multiple choice. The reason for me saying this is I also like to do the same thing on these study groups. The first question is anything but a multiple choice question. So here's the very first question that we're going to go through today. So I have a picture of a network share that I'm going to show you in just a moment. If you're on the Socrative, it will flip over to that and you'll be able to see the graphic on your mobile device or in your browser. So on that graphic, I want you to be able to determine what RMK's permissions are when connecting to this network share. And I have an image. In fact, we might as well show. Here's what we have. So we have two windows on the screen. Hopefully you recognize what those two windows are and what the differences are. And remember the question, which was, what are RMK's permissions when connecting to this network share? That's the important thing that we need to know about. And you'll notice that the question is sort of, it's a fill in the blank. There's no multiple choice associated with this. So a number of you are going through and trying to figure out the details of this. I think some of you may have even worked through some of these Windows problems before. And I'm getting responses in already that I can see on my side. So far, you guys are doing really good. So this is one of those where you do have to think about that. If you think you know the answers, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put any tips or links in the chat. That doesn't help anybody for any of those things. So you've got two things on the screen here. You've got one, there's RMK, and you can see tons of permissions for RMK. Here's another screen of some kind for RMK that has a completely different set of permissions. So hopefully you've been able to piece together what those differences are between those two. I'd like to understand a little more of what's happening with RMK. Let's see what people have done. A lot of people are Googling. I can tell by how fast the answers come in that a lot of people are Googling. So a number of you, I think most of you are spot on with the answer. Some of you are trying to figure out those details. Well, what we have on the screen here, here's the answer for all of us. Let's go through these. What we have on the screen is on the left side, we have the NTFS permissions for this particular folder called Mission Reports. On the right side, we have a whole different set of permissions for the same folder for permission reports, but the share permissions that are here are different than the security permissions through NTFS, because that's what we have on the left is the NTFS permissions, and on the right are the share permissions. So what's the difference though really between share and NTFS? Well, if you're working on a computer local to that drive, local to that storage device, or wherever those files and folders are located, your NTFS permissions are the ones that are primary, because you're not connecting across the network. You are local on that particular device. If you're connecting across the network, there's a whole nother set of permissions that you have to consider and add on to the NTFS permissions called the share permissions, because people can't connect into that unless you create a share and provide some type of permissions for that share. But the question is going to be, which one of those wins? You have a whole set of permissions on NTFS and a completely different set of permissions on a share. And most of the time, those are not identical. Those are very different, in fact, often when dealing with that. Well, the rule for that is the most restrictive setting is going to win, which means that deny is going to beat and allow every day. There are some things you must consider also about NTFS, because if you are on an NTFS folder, it's taking the same permissions as the folder just above it, the parent folder. The only difference there is if you are moving a folder on the same volume from one place to another, it keeps the permissions in that folder. There's a lot of reasons behind that. We don't really have the time today to go through all those pieces. I'll talk a little bit about it in my video, which is 3.3 in the 902 section, Windows Security Settings. I looked through the questions, the answers. I would say probably over 90% of you got this one spot on. I have a feeling some of you have had to deal with setting permissions before. What if Rodney was not on this network? What if he was local on this machine? Then how does the share permission work here? If he was local on this computer working directly, then what happens? Well, in that particular case, this second part of the screen, the second window that's up with share permissions doesn't even apply. If you're local on that computer, you're not having to share anything. You're local. You can access these directly. So if he was sitting and logged into that device, he would have modify, read and execute, list folder contents, read, write, effectively have all of those permissions just by being on that computer. This is one of the reasons we lock up these computers in a room, by the way. Just one of the reasons we lock them up, so that someone can't log on locally to that machine. They are logging in and connecting through a share, and we're setting our permissions through all of those shares. So keep that in mind as a difference. When you're on the exam, you could easily be asked something like this when you start your exam, to be able to figure out all of those different ideas and techniques with all of those. So hopefully you got those ready to go. Hopefully that was one that was just normal. We know how to do that now, and we can address it when we hit the exam. Let's do another question. Our question is, which of these utilities would be the best way? I'm hitting the wrong button on my side. Which of these utilities would be the best way to determine the route that a packet takes to a destination? And I've given you some options. So finally, some multiple choice. That would be nice. Which of these utilities would be the best way to determine the route that a packet takes to a destination? Would it be route path? Would it be net path? Would it be trace route? Would it be ping? Would it be net route? One of those would be the best way to determine the route that a packet takes to a destination. And if you think you know what that answer is, you can go to professormesser.com/QA. This is one I think a number of you probably used before. I think most of you have probably used this before, and I would hope that you had. This is one that I show in my videos. I demonstrate this in my videos so that you're able to see it in action, and it's one that does come in awfully handy when you're trying to talk to your local support team and you're explaining to them that things are way off, and they're always wanting you to reboot your side. Yeah, but I'm getting out and I'm getting this far. I can determine the route this packet is taking to the destination. It's either not the right route or the route is ending. How do I do that? How would we even come close to making that happen? Well, one of the best ways is probably the one that 86% of you have answered. Nobody really got this one wrong. It's letter C. Number C is trace route. It's not a number. Letter C is trace route. Route path, I made it up. It's not real. Net path, made it up. It's not real. Ping's real. Net route, made it up. It's not real. So the only real answers here were ping and trace route. Maybe that's why I made it a little too easy. We're working through this. Ping would tell you that the remote destination is available or not, but it doesn't tell you anything about the route that it takes. Trace route's pretty nifty. Trace route is a very nifty little utility, because if you ever want to map through every single router that you got, it's remarkable how many routers you go through between your location and where you're accessing on the internet. You could be going through 10, 12, 15 routers to get back and forth with this. The trace route command is trace RT in Windows. The whole thing is trace route in in a POSIX-based operating system. The POSIX-based operating systems are the Unix and Linuxes of the world. Same thing for Mac OS, for example, because Mac OS is really based on BSD. So it's one of those that if you're running on a Mac or a Linux, traceroute is your command. If you're on Windows, traceRT. So that'd be useful to know. This is a remarkable little utility that takes advantage of a message that is sent by devices when your time to live hits 0. It tries to tell the person that sent the message, sorry, I wasn't able to send this through because your time to live got to 0. So we take advantage of those error messages to really determine what the every hop through the network is. In the video, I demonstrate this in great detail in my 229.01 section 4.4 network troubleshooting at the command line. We do that. It's a really nifty utility to do. Let's see if I can do one real quick. Try to make this happen. I think I can show. Can I show one from where I am? I'm not sure I can. I think I can. I could probably show a little of this. So I just ran a trace route to 8.8.8.8. It's going through the trace route right now. Whenever you run a trace route, it starts with an IP address that runs through a number of different iterations of that. So you're able to run through and determine an entire route from beginning to end. This one I even did the IP address breakdown, so I was able to get DNS names from that. So useful to have those things there to be able to very quickly determine where or what the route might be for those. Let's do another question. Oh, by the way, if you were wondering, the folks that answered trace route, the 87% of you, did get that one absolutely right. So well done. Those of you wondering what's on the exam, people in the chat room are going, is that on the exam? Are you sure that's on the exam? Everything you need to know is in the exam objectives. So if you're wondering, is that going to be on the exam, go to the CompTIA exam objectives, and that will, everything in there could be on the exam. So it's very easy to find out exactly what you might run into. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. Here it is. Which of the following would be the best way to dispose of a toner cartridge? Which of the following would be the best way to dispose of a toner cartridge? Would it be follow the instructions on the MSDS? Would it be dispose of it with all other trash? Would it be to use a third party to incinerate the cartridge? Would it be dismantle the cartridge and wash out all the toner with cold water? Or would it be ship the used cartridge to the original cartridge reseller? Those are your 5 options to determine which of the following would be the best way to dispose of a toner cartridge. Maybe you know. Maybe you have an idea of what that might be. There is a best way. Now, one of the things on here you'll notice is this terminology. You'll run into this on the exam, which is it's asking you the best way. There may be other answers in here that are perfectly acceptable, but none of them is going to be the best one except for one. And that's what you're looking for. If you think you know the answer, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer this. Give it a shot. Take a stab. Try to determine what it might be to be able to make this happen. It's one of those that does come in handy. You do need to know these things. This is whenever I start breaking through all of the different ideas of what it could be. I really have to go through every question and every answer and be able to figure all of those things out. Hopefully that would be something you would be able to do as well. That's one whenever I start trying to break through all of those different challenging problems, you really do need to know exactly what the differences are with all of those. Whenever I start working through these, whenever I go through and try to figure out which one is the best, I often run into the situation, you'll see it on the exam, where 2 of them could really be a good answer. But you really have to understand the differences of the scenario to make that happen. And that's where you would really come into the details of this. That was me checking the YouTube side over there. People in the chat room wanted to know, but everything looked okay. Everything looked just fine, didn't it? The health was good, YouTube told me. So, sorry, once you pick an answer, you can't change it. That's a little different on my Socrative, by the way, than on an actual exam, because in an actual exam, you can go back and change every single answer you gave until the point where you finally submit the exam. So that does come in handy. Let's see what you answered on this one. How do we do? Well, we're a little torn. We do have a majority, though. 63% of us, 64% said follow the instructions on the MSDS, but 30% of us said ship the used cartridge to the original cartridge reseller. Well, that's good. That'd be interesting to have that there. 4% though said use a third party to incinerate the cartridge, and only 1% said dispose of it with all other trash. Also at 1%, dismantle the cartridge and wash out all the toner with cold water. That's not a good answer. That seemed like the right answer. Be able to get there. And all of those pieces to have those there. So which one is it really? If you were going to work through this and have that broken down by all the different pieces of it, you would probably want to follow the MSDS. This is the materials safety. This is the materials safety data sheet, MSDS. And almost everything you buy these days from a technology perspective is going to have an MSDS in it. Some of them are going to provide you with a lot of detail, especially when it's something like a battery or a toner cartridge where there are chemicals involved. You need to understand how to dispose and take care of those particular items without causing any type of harm to yourself or others. So this is one where you'll get product information, the composition of the product, any hazard information. If this product gets on you, what first aid should you be taking care of? This is quite a challenge. This is where you really do run into a number of problems is you lose this. So fortunately, a lot of manufacturers have put this on their website. Some people, you'll see it called the SDS, but it is formally the Material Safety Data Sheet. That is the formal name of that. The idea here is you want to have at least somewhere to go. Hey, you've got a bunch of old laptops. We have all these batteries from all these laptops. What do we do with these? I always throw them out. Do we send them back? What do we do? They'll tell you what to do. You'll have a perfect idea of what to do with this. When you look at something like a toner cartridge, there's going to be a very specific answer for these. Yes, by the way, for those of you wondering, again, at the bottom of the screen, I always put it's a 22902 exam. This comes from my video 5.2, Managing Your Computing Environment. There is 64% of you that said A, follow the instructions on the MSDS, and you'd be absolutely right. That is the correct answer. That's what you need to do. Now, some of you have probably seen when you've bought a new cartridge that they put a return label on them now so that you can put the old cartridge in and just ship them back at no charge. This happens on the cartridges I get here from my laser printer. So that's what I do. I stick the used cartridge in, I put the label on the top, I put it outside my door, and UPS takes it away. That's one where it does come in handy. So you may think, ship the used cartridge to the original cartridge reseller. The problem is not everybody does that. And it's probably not going back to my reseller of the cartridge. I'm not sending it back to Amazon. This is not a situation that usually the manufacturer is the one that's accepting those, but that does not happen all the time. Not every manufacturer does that. And you would need some very specific shipping instructions to be able to do something like that. Even if they did support it, that's not the best answer. The best answer is find the MSDS and it will tell you the best answer, because the best answer is going to come from the people that created that toner cartridge to begin with. So make sure you do that. Don't throw it out in the normal garbage. Not a good idea at all to have that there. Well, as you've already seen, these first three questions, tons of content, a lot of information. It all comes directly from the A+ exam objectives. It all comes directly from the questions, the topics that are contained in those exam objectives. And I've, of course, created all of my videos based on that. What I've done is gone through every video, and I've created a set of notes that are really the most important things you should know for the exam. They come directly from the 901 and 902 videos, and that covers everything. Networking, security, hardware, operating system, Mac OS, Linux command line, troubleshooting, it's all in there. Everything that you need to know for your exam. This is not, of course, anything to replace your textbook. It's not replacing the videos. I would not recommend buying the study guide, these course notes, and immediately walking into the exam. That's not what it's for. But if you're someone who doesn't take good notes, you'd rather not take good notes, you'd rather support Messer Studios, with these notes, this is how you do it. These are in great detail. So for example, here they are. Here's the 901 and the 902 course notes. Tons of detail in these course notes. I provide them to you as a PDF file, so that makes it easy. So you can download it immediately when you buy it. You can download a copy. And that is a copy you can put on all of your devices. So you can go through and find a way to make that available to you wherever you happen to be. Put it on your mobile phone, put it on your tablet, put it on your laptop computer, put it on a USB drive you can plug into your television and do all of those pieces. And relatively inexpensive too, $15 each for those. You can also buy a printed version. That's the one I was showing here. Probably better if you could see it. There it is. There's the printed version. It's the same information in the printed version. It's just bound. It's a nice binding. And it's something that's a lot of people like printed. I get it. So I put all of those course notes in the printed version too. And when you buy the printed version, you also get the digital PDF version for free. It's cost so much money to print. It just makes sense. You should get the digital version as well. Have a look at that. ProfessorMesser.com/A+CN. And there's plenty of links on my website. You will also do there. People asking, can you pay with crypto? You can right now. You can pay with directly on my website. Interactively, you can pay with Bitcoin. If you'd like to use some other type of coin, just let me know, and we can do it that way. I'll send you the wallet ID, and you can do it that way. So if you want to give up that Litecoin, don't know if you want to do that. If you want to use Bitcoin Cash, I'm fine with that. More than happy to take that. And of course, every bit of this goes back to keeping the website going. So thank you so much for those of you that have already purchased these. I would not be able to do these live study groups, to continue creating videos without your help. So thank you. You help keep all of this going. Find out more about those, ProfessorMesser.com/A+CN. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. Here's one that we can go through. Which of these best describes a port trigger? A port trigger. Which of these best describes a port trigger? What would it be? Now, this is one where you do have to go through this list and really try to figure it out. So which of these best describes a port trigger? A is a port is always forwarded through a router. B is that an internal IP address is converted to an external IP address. C is the best available 802.11 frequency will be used. D is that certain applications will have a higher priority through the router. And E, a port forward is created when a particular application is used. Those 5 options are very different things. One of them best describes a port trigger. So maybe you know the answer. If you do, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and you can put your answer in on what a port trigger might be. This is one you should have an idea. For those of you in the chat room are wondering, this doesn't sound, there wasn't a lot of networking stuff. Well, we are in the A+ study groups. That may have something to do with it. And there is a small section of networking in the A+ exam objectives, and we finally hit one. So if you're waiting on a networking question, you got one. There it is. I try to hit all of the different categories from every exam on a study group. I'm not successful because there's too many different domains. I can never get through enough questions on the study group to do that. But I try to do that and get through them. The cost for the course notes, for those asking in the chat room, it's $15 for 901 and $15 for 902. And if you buy both of them, the digital version is 30 something. Is it 45 now? I think it's 45 for the printed version, both combined, because it costs so much to print. That's the problem with paper, isn't it? It's slowly fading away. Not fast enough. It's kind of nice to have a printed version though. It's one of those things that you don't know how great it is until I printed it out. I thought, oh, that's kind of nice just to be able to read through this, make notes. It's a little more flexible for a lot of people. So that's fine. Let's see how we did with this answer. Port triggering. We talking about a horse? What's going on with this? Well, 65% of us said a port forward is created when a particular application is used. Letter E. Now the question becomes, could it be one of the others? Because we have a tie for second with B, an internal IP address is converted to an external IP address, and D, certain applications will have a higher priority through the router. In third place is a port is always forwarded through a router, and 0% have chosen that the best available 802.11 frequency would be used. So what is a port trigger? What would that be talking about? It's sort of like a NAT. It's sort of like a network address translation, but which is a port forward, by the way, for those of you wondering about port forwards. It's really just another type of network address translation. But a port trigger is not one that sticks around all the time. It's one that eventually will go away. In fact, it's not there, then it's not there anymore. So it's not something that's always statically sitting there and waiting for something to happen. Usually you start an application, the application talks to your router and says, I would like a port forward, please. And the router says, well, of course, Mr. Application, I shall give you a port forward. And then when you turn off the application says, well, I'm shutting down. Hey, router, you can get rid of that NAT for me now. Thanks so much. And the router deletes it from the forwarding list. This is something that can be used really for almost any application. It makes it a little bit easier for people that have these applications that need two-way communication. There are people from the outside communicating to you directly. This becomes pretty handy to have that functionality. The problem you run into is that only one of these triggers can forward on a particular port at a time. So you can't have, for instance, two devices wanting to have this port trigger set up, because now you don't have a way to know the incoming traffic, who it really belongs to. Because on the inside, you know what it is, but from the outside, everybody's talking to a single IP address and a single port number. So you're not able to figure out with multiple users what it would be. So port triggers are not very useful when you're dealing with that type of problem. You would have to change port numbers with the application to be able to do that, which may be possible. Your application may allow it, but a lot don't. So if you answered E, a port forward is created when a particular application is used, that's it. 67% of you got that one absolutely right. I try to shoot for 50%. So we did a little bit better than what I was expecting. A port is always forwarded through a router would be a port forward, or a network address translation, more like a destination, or it'd be a source NAT in that particular scenario. An internal IP address is converted to an external IP address. That is network address translation, but that really doesn't best describe what's going on with a port trigger given the other options that we had available. The best 802.11 frequency will be used. Well, nobody bit on that one. Everybody understood. No, this has nothing to do with 802.11, and certain applications will have a higher priority through the router. That's quality of service. That has nothing to do with a port trigger. Of course, those things can be used at the same time in different ways, but setting priorities of applications through the router falls cleanly in the quality of service, has nothing to do really with port triggering. The best answer again is E, a port forward is created when a particular application is used. And if, for those of you that were paying attention, that comes from the 229.01 section 2.6, configuring a Soho wireless router was the video that came from. In case you ever want to go back and do some reference, that's where it is. Having that there. Let's do another question. We've got time for a couple more. This question, more of a troubleshooting question. This is a very similar type of question that you might get on the exam, which means it's very long-winded. You have to be very good at reading on the exam. So here is this long-winded question I have for you. You've been asked to look at a new computer that's having problems, but you're not sure what storage devices, volumes, or drive letters have been configured. What command line would allow you to view this information? And now what's interesting about this question, it's another, I guess you could call it a performance-based question, because I'm not giving you any multiple choice on this. I'm having you type in that you've been given this particular scenario. What would you do? If you think about it, this is really very similar to what you might get on an exam question, a performance-based question. You might be plopped at the command line and it may say, you've been asked to look at a new computer that's been having problems. You're not sure what storage devices, volumes, or drive letters have been configured. How would you see that information? Here's your command prompt, go. And you have to be able to type it in and make that happen. What would it be? How would it work? What would we do? So a lot of you know this one, I think, as we've been going through it and having that there. So it's one of those. Yeah, there is a lot of NAT going on in the world. In the chat room, people talking about NAT, network address translation. There certainly is. On the IPv4 side, absolutely. Tons of NAT. Comes in handy. I guess the one most people think about is the PAT, the port address translation, which is really a destination NAT where we're changing, or really that's the source. So if we get both of those, we're changing our source IP address as it's passing through to have all of those. This particular question is a Windows question. I really should have put Windows in there. But if you answer the question with what you would do at a Mac OS or a Linux, I'd be very impressed to have all of those there. Because when you say command prompt, not a lot of options there. Command prompt, there isn't a command line. There's not a lot of options in the Linux world to be able to provide that. Maybe you do know, but it's not part of the exam. This is a Windows question for sure. To have all of those there. Yeah, IPv6, it definitely is in use. I do IPv6 here, and there's quite a number of sites I'm going to that are talking back to me with IPv6 directly. It's getting bigger and bigger. Most of the providers, like your ISPs, have been doing IPv6 for a long time in their core. So IPv6 was not just ratified as an internet standard in 2017. It was not. I'm sorry. It's been around for 30 years, 40 years. It's been around 30 years. I want to say 30. If I had to guess, as far as the standard's concerned, we'd be in trouble if we had just ratified it 6 months ago. That'd be kind of scary to have that there. But I've been dealing with IPv6 for a very, very, very long time. I was decoding IPv6 on sniffers before there was a graphical Windows type interface on them. So IPv6 been around a while. The carriers love IPv6. They have completely embraced IPv6. They're doing tons of IPv6 in the core of their network, and they're of course now passing it out to their customers and really allowing these capabilities to do it. So it does come in handy to have all of those things there. If I look through the answers, we don't have a set of consolidated answers here, obviously, because not everybody, we didn't have multiple choice. So we're just kind of typing things in. Most of you, I think I can show some of these. Most of you said things like disk part. Most of you said, here's one, comp management, disk management. Some of these are graphical type commands you would get in the user interface, but the question, of course, was asking specifically about a command line that you would type in. A lot of people saying disk part. If I had to choose from this, I would choose disk part. You were here close when you said .info.derp. That was close. That was a stab. You should at least guess, right? You should at least go through this. The correct answer is indeed disk part. That is where you would manage disk configurations. That's where you would be able to see things like what volumes are on the computer, what options are available. Really a useful little utility, especially if you have never touched this computer before, you're sitting down for the first time, you're only at this command prompt and you're wondering what is running on this machine. So this is a great way to do it, to have that there. So you at least can go through and see, oh, this machine has 3 volumes. You can see volume 2 is drive C, volume 0 is drive D. That's an interesting one to be able to configure. And in fact, this computer here also has a volume 1 that doesn't have a drive letter. It's your system partition that is holding a backup. Maybe it's one for recovery. So you can do all those pieces. So if you answered disk part for that in the middle of the study group exam question, a performance-based question, you did pretty well. Nice job with that one. Type a disk part in, hit enter, and you get to see everything. You don't even need to put any command line extras. Just type disk part. You get some nice views of that there. I think I used the list volume in there once you're inside, and you can list out everything that happens to be there. There is tons of command line things like this that you need to know. I always tell people you should learn everything that's on the exam objectives, understand not only what they are, but how they're used, and do some Q&A, watch the videos, read a book, and of course, get as much hands-on as you can. One of the challenges is that you have to be able to somehow get a Vista operating system. You have to also get a Windows 7 operating system. There's Linux, there's Windows 8 and 8.1. There's a lot of commands to be running and understand the Windows operating system, but not a lot of people have these operating systems just sitting around. That's why there's things like the Live Labs from GTS Learning, where they will create, for example, 900 series labs for you in a virtual machine. So this is not a static on the rails. You have to click this thing first and this thing second and this thing third. They give you a lab with a scenario with a bunch of machines, and then you can connect with this machine. There's Windows 8.1. I've got a domain controllers in this particular view. Maybe I've got a Windows 7 machine that I can connect to. This is all done through this remote communication too, all in my browser. So it's very fast. It's a full-blown Windows machine. If you want to go off script and bring up the file manager and click through the music or the pictures, this is a stock configuration of Windows. You can see it's pretty quick to be able to have all these things here. Also, considering I'm doing a live stream right now, it's remarkable to have that remote communication. But you can also follow the labs. Let's go. The first thing in the lab, for instance, tells us, here's what we need to do. Here's exercise 1. It gives you an explanation and says, step 1, do this, so that you can step through all of these pieces. They even give you information. I even didn't even follow it right. Comes in handy. So if you're ever trying to get into more hands-on, but you just didn't have the equipment and you want an easy way to do it, follow this link and you get the special pricing. If you want both the GTS Learning ebook and the Live Labs, it's $109. And the only way you get that special price is if you follow that link, professormesser.com/livelabs. They have all of my videos embedded into their book. So as soon as you read about anything relating to disk part, my disk part video is right there. So you can do the command line. If you just want the ebook, $35. 400 practice questions with this. Plus, it's those folks at GTS Learning. If you've never seen their products before, quality stuff, it's what I use to help write and produce my videos. So they create the books, they send them to me and say, here's a bunch of stuff you can use. And I gladly use it straight to the point. They don't mess around. You learn exactly what you need to know for your exam. It's my kind of book. That's exactly what I want. I don't have time for everything else. Find out more about that, professormesser.com/livelabs. And my thanks to GTS Learning for this. They're great folks to work with. Let's do another question. You're installing a wireless adapter into a laptop. What kind of adapter would you be most likely to install? And I need to flip over and start that so you can see the proper answers on here. Here we are. What kind of adapter would you be most likely to install? Fortunately, a multiple choice. We have a choice here between PCIe, PCI, micro PCI, USB, mini PCIe. I guess that was PCIe, PCI, micro PCIe, USB, mini PCIe. There's a lot of micro mini PCI things happening there. Which one is it? Installing a wireless adapter into a laptop, what kind of adapter would you be most likely to install? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. QA stands for, I don't remember, but something easy to remember, QA. professormesser.com/QA. That's one. I'm going to take a sneak peek while we're doing that and see how we're doing. My goal, as I mentioned, is try to get something that most everybody is knowledgeable with. At least 50% of you should be knowledgeable with this. So that's where I'm going with this, is try to figure out how can I find these questions that can really test your memory at what these things might be. And if you've never installed an adapter into a laptop, a lot of people haven't, because the laptop kind of comes with everything these days. It has everything on the outside. Not a lot of people install anything on the inside of a laptop, but as a networking, computer technician, professional person, you will probably be asked to do this, and you'll need to install it into these devices. This is one that does come in handy to be able to work through this. There's only a few options. There are only so many options available on this one to have this here. So let's see how we did with these different options. And you can see we really were not able to really get a good answer from this. You could see almost a tie for first between micro PCIe, USB, and mini PCIe. 13% of you said PCIe and 5% said PCI, but it's really split 31, 28, 24 on those top three, which is almost effectively a really straight down the line. What you see a lot on what people are doing on laptop machines these days, there's really two types of adapters you'll see. In some of the older ones, it's the larger mini PCI. But on most modern computers, you will find mini PCI Express. In fact, I have a new computer coming. It has SSD on mini PCI Express that it's using to connect up. So it's a very small type of form factor. This one is a wireless, so it even has the connectors at the top for the antennas. So you can plug those in to both sides of that. This becomes pretty useful to have that there. All of those pieces available. And it's easy to install. You plug it in, it goes right into the slot, you push it down, and then it's got a place right on the outside to put the screws in to hold it down if you need that. Sometimes there will be connectors on the existing laptop motherboard to allow you to do that. In fact, the mini PCI doesn't have any place for screws. It simply snaps on the sides. So you may see that on your laptop as well. And pretty small to be able to work with. These mini PCI Express, mini PCIe is what you'll run into. So you have to know if somebody says, I want to install this on the inside of my laptop, you need to check their laptop model and see which one of these you can plug in. Usually there is something on the back that you can open, you can plug it in, and you can work with it. So that's why if you answered mini PCIe, which is really selection E, mini PCIe, 32% of you answered E. Indeed, it was mini PCIe. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then what you'll want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You'll want to choose Contact Us, which is really Contact Me. And when you do that, it will ask you for your name. Put the name you want this certificate to be under. You want to put your email address, make sure it's correct because I have to send this back to you. And then you want to put somewhere in the bottom part, you can write a message to me, you can tell me anything, but somewhere in there, put the words mini PCIe. And if you do that, I'll know you must have watched this. You have to follow that particular process. It's not just knowing the word, you have to do exactly what I just said to be able to earn the continuing education unit credit. So contact us, put your name, email address. If you were nice enough to put that this is the February 2018 study group, that helps me a little bit. And then you can put whatever else in there. Just make sure you put the words mini PCIe. If you don't, I usually send back a note and say, there was a word you should have put in there. What was it? Then you have to remember what that was. So don't forget that part. It's almost the most important part. The whole thing is the most important. Now, if you are getting certified and you aren't certified yet, these CEUs aren't going to help you. CompTIA won't accept them until you're certified. But if you already have an A+, a Network Plus, Security Plus, this type of content would certainly apply for those. So that would be something useful to have. But you have to earn your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus for these CEUs to even be useful. So make sure you remember that. And if you answered on this one, E, mini PCIe, you did pretty well. Pretty well. Let's do another one. Some folks here were talking about Linux earlier, so let's do a Linux question. Here is our Linux question. You've been asked to back up some files from a Linux server. Which of these would you be most likely to use? Oh, those most likely questions. Would it be Yum? Would it be tar? Would it be Time Machine? Would it be backup and restore? Would it be apt-get? So you've been asked to back up some files from a Linux server. Which of these would you be most likely to use? Would it be Yum? Would it be tar? Would it be Time Machine? Would it be backup and restore? Would it be apt-get? These all sound like something I would use. Maybe that's something you would use for working through this. Now, if you don't know and you're in your exam and you have no idea, you missed that topic, you walked in the room, you weren't ready, and they present you with a question like this, guess. Do not leave it blank ever. You only earn points if you get a question right. If you leave a question blank, you obviously won't earn points. If you get the question wrong, you don't earn points either, but you also don't lose points. So it doesn't hurt you to take a stab. It can only help you to take a guess. Never leave any multiple choice questions blank on your exam. Just go down, put them all in column A. If you want to do that, maybe you'll hit 25% of them. All column A. Just do it that way. Just random. Just make it random. You're going to hit 25% if you randomize it anyway. So that may be the thing to think about is if you don't know the answer, just take a guess. Just don't ever leave those blank. Now, that's only for CompTIA. There are some exams you will take where that's not the case, where you shouldn't be guessing. But for CompTIA's exam, take a guess. You'll be fine. Let's see how we did. Let me take a quick peek. See how we did with this one. So we've got all these different options. You've been asked to back up some files from a Linux server. Which of these would you be most likely to use? 50% have said tar. And 18% have said apt-get. 13%, 10%, and 9%, almost a tie there for third, said backup and restore, Yum, and time machine. So we could go with 50% that said tar. Is that really the one that we would go with? Maybe, maybe not. Let's see what some options are for scheduling backups. Well, in Linux, you got tons of options. Linux is, well, whenever you talk about Linux, there are tons of options. There's plenty of things that you can perform backups with. The command line, at the graphical front end, if you run a graphical front end, there's probably many things that you can use that are built into your distribution for backup and restore. But I specifically gave you a list of 5 things that you would have to know. The one that is probably, well, it's pretty easy to remember is tar. tar is tape archive, and it is a very useful backup application to be able to take files, directories, store them. And they don't have to, although the name says tape archive, we don't use tapes much anymore for most things. There are some things we absolutely use tapes for. But if you just need to back up a certain set of files and just put them on a USB drive, tar is a great thing to use for that. It really can write them to not just a tape, it can write them to a file, it can write them to a disk, it can write them to a USB drive. There's also, I use this one a lot, rsync. I use this one a lot on ProfessorMesser.com. I have multiple web servers, and whenever I have one that I change everything, and when I make a change to my primary server, it's updated across all my other servers by using rsync. And I do the same thing. I have a test computer here that is in Messer Studios. In fact, it's right down here to the right. You can't even see it, but it's down a little bit lower. And that's a test machine for the website. I can update that with exactly what's running on my server by performing an rsync, and it downloads everything and updates that machine. And then I can do some testing locally before I roll it out to the machines that are out in the cloud. So it comes in handy to have those capabilities there. And indeed, that is the right answer. tar, btar, 50%. rsync was not an option here, so we weren't able to do that. Yum and apt-get are the applications used to perform updates to the operating system and applications. If you are working through those, that's one that can be very useful to have that there. That would be, those are also depend on the distribution you're using as to whether you will use Yum or apt-get. But if you type in either, you'll see, type in both of them. You'll see on your Linux distribution which one you're using. Depends on both of those. Time Machine is useful on Mac OS, but it's a graphical front end. In fact, that's what I use on my Mac to be able to update and keep everything backed up is Time Machine. If I need to go back, if I delete a file or I changed a file and I want to go back to an earlier rev, I just go into the Time Machine and pick my day and time and copy the file back over. Works like a champ. Backup and Restore is the Windows Backup and Restore utility. It's the name of it. There's a number of utilities, though, called Backup and Restore. I've seen some in Linux as well. But that was not the best answer because I said, which of these would you be most likely to use? The only one in this list that you would be most likely to use is going to be Yum. No, it's not going to be Yum. It's going to be tar. Tar is really extremely flexible. I have a number of little backup utilities on my server that come in so handy because I just tar up a directory and now I've got a copy of everything. And you can set that, it's the command line. You can set up a utility to be able to do it automatically every X number of minutes, every update, every hour, every day, whatever you'd like to do to have that one there. So it becomes useful. Does apt-get And Yum protects you from Meltdown Inspector if there is a patch for something, whether it's Meltdown Inspector or anything else. If there is a vulnerability, you normally would run a Yum or an apt-get to be able to update your applications, your kernel, and anything else that's there. It's a very easy way to do it. In fact, I need to do one on a server I have somewhere else. I need to do a Yum there so I can get on the latest update of the kernel to protect against Meltdown Inspector. We don't want anything to happen with those, do we? Now, if you're ever working and you're looking at this and you're working through your book, somebody even in the chat room said, I didn't see Yum anywhere in my book. You need to make sure your book is for the 22901 exam. Absolutely. All of this content, everything that's in my videos, everything that's in these study groups, everything that's in my daily Q&A, everything's in my pop quiz collection books. My course notes comes directly from the A+ exam objectives, and everything you study should be on the you should study this A+ exam objectives. This should be the document you start with on your studies, and it should be the document you end with on your studies, and you should be using it all the way through. It tells you word for word, letter for letter, what you need to know before you walk into the exam. There is no question what you need to know when you go through these exam objectives, because they list out everything. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives to download these. They're free. Why wouldn't you use these? They tell you everything. They're a great checklist, and it's something you should always take advantage of before walking into your exam. If you're wondering, do I know everything? This will tell you if you know everything and if you're ready to take your exam. I do one of these A+ study groups every month. This one, our February study group, we've gone through an hour already. Can you believe it? We are now planning for the next one. So in March the 7th, exactly 1 month from today, is our next A+ study group. If you're watching this and it's not even close to March, we're way past March, and you're wondering when is the next live event, and you just want to know whether it's A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or anything else, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll be able to, in the calendar, know exactly when the updates are to work through those. So hopefully that's been something you can do as well. This is going to be also, there's a registration there that will put you into the notification email that I send out 5 minutes before. There are also links in the calendar if you'd like to add it to your Google Calendar. I update my Google Calendar, then it automatically updates your Google Calendar with the Google Calendar. It's hard to say. So hopefully that's something too that would be useful for what you're doing, to have all of those pieces there. The TAR question was a 902 question, for those wondering. So that's section 2, other operating systems. That's one that if you want to tune in for that next study group, always check the calendar. It'll tell you. Also, nice time zone converter as well to have that there. Have all of those pieces. Well, we've gone through all of these questions already, but I'm always doing things throughout the month. You should be getting my daily pop quiz question. One of the best ways to get it is on Twitter, through professormesser.com/Twitter. I just put 140 Security Plus videos, brand new, out on YouTube. Had you subscribed and got notifications, you would know this already, and you can easily do that by going to professormesser.com/YouTube. I'm currently working on Network Plus updates. If you want to see all the newest Network Plus stuff, that's what you should do, is subscribe and click the little bell to get notifications. Course notes, of course, don't forget about those. Keeps the lights on around here. professormesser.com/A+CN, and I think it might help you too. I really designed these course notes for something I want to study from. Hopefully that'll help you as well. My pop quiz collection at professormesser.com/PQC. Pop quiz collection, that's what that is. And of course, my thanks to GTS Learning. Get that special pricing on the live labs from professormesser.com/live labs. Don't forget about the calendar every month. Stick around for the next hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines. We're going to have people calling in with who knows what question. We're going to find out in just a moment. Stick around. If you do have to go, I appreciate you hanging out. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Let's see if I can get my phone lines up and running. Let's do that. I almost forgot how to do this. I didn't even have the right thing logged in. See, you get rusty by going 2 weeks without a study group. I shouldn't do that. We're going to need to turn this down a little bit. Okay, and then I need to call in on my side. I think now I've got a phone line up, so you can, of course, call in if you want to, but I can't talk to you yet until I do the same thing. So we'll make that happen. We'll call this particular thing, and we'll call that number, and it'll make some noises. And then I put up the thing.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. And then I do a thing here where I type this, and I type.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Again, that's redundant. And then I type that, and I push this with the pound sign.
Host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from.
Well, there you go. I'm in the host room. So if you would like to call in and talk to me directly, I'm taking questions from the chat room as well. So you're welcome to put questions in there. You can find the chat room, professormaster.com/live. There is also a phone number in the continental U.S. You can call 855-785-7545. That is the number that will get you there to do all of that. There's also on Skype. This is free. It's a toll-free number. So if you're on Skype anywhere in the world, you can call for free. Put a +1 at the beginning. +1 855-785-7545. Let me pull this up just a moment. There's our title screen there. Let's go to the phone lines then and see what people are talking about with those pieces. Let's go to the 3310 area code. We'll start at the top. Caller, thanks for calling in. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello. What's your name?
Hi, Professor. My name's Darion.
Hey, Darion. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, first off, thank you for all of your amazing videos.
Oh, you're very
They're
welcome,
great
sir.
help.
You're very
They helped
kind.
me pass my 901 exam.
Excellent.
And I'm taking my 902 exam tomorrow. My question was I have no experience in the industry, and the only thing I will have is my A+ certification.
Sure.
What would you recommend I do for looking for my first job?
Employers, and I'm speaking as someone who was a hiring manager at one time in my career, employers are looking for a number of different things, and different employers are looking for different things. Some employers love certifications. Some employers, they don't care if you have a certification or not, but it's fine if you do. Some employers are very big on looking for a formal 4-year degree. Other employers don't care. So it's going to differ depending on who you go talk to. But one of your biggest challenges, if you have no experience, is you run into that inevitable catch-22 of organizations want to hire people who have experience, but if you don't have experience, how are you ever going to get experience? Because that's what everybody's looking for. So one of the things that I will often tell people is that you may not realize it, but IT, it is a very regionalized group of people that you will be working with throughout your career. The people you meet in your area who are doing IT are probably going to be the people who are doing IT through your entire career. And of course, you'll move from business to business, but people generally don't move out of the area very often. They usually stay in their local municipality or their local area anyway. And because of that, one of the things you'll find is very often, as they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know, which is not exactly accurate. Knowing people really does help in this industry. If you don't know anybody in an organization, they don't know you when you walk in the door. They don't know what your skills are. They don't understand who you are as a person. They don't understand the type of decisions you make. They don't understand if you're somebody who comes into work bright and early every morning. You're never late. You're always working the hardest. You're the person they don't know. One of the things I often will recommend to people is to meet other people in your area doing this. And fortunately, there are many great ways to do this. If you've never attended a Microsoft user group, now's the time to go. If you are interested in networking, go to a Cisco user group. If you're interested in anything relating to technology, visit that user group or visit all of them, because the people at those meetings may not necessarily be people doing the hiring, but they may be the people who know the people that are doing the hiring. And they can, of course, say, oh, yeah, I know him. He goes to the Microsoft user group meeting. He did a presentation on this thing. We talked about this stuff. He's very knowledgeable. And then you can at least get your foot in the door and talk more about yourself and what you know. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't take advantage of enough, is meeting these people. Because of these user group meetings, the people that are there want to network as well. You're always looking for your next job, whatever you happen to be. So you're always trying to figure out what your next step is going to be. And if you meet somebody and say, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. I just worked on my A+. I came here to learn more about the Microsoft user group. Where do you work? What do you do? For entry level, do you guys hire help desk? Oh, you do. What do you usually look for when you're hiring somebody with help desk? Oh, we like somebody who has this credential and that credential. They know Microsoft. They know this. And then you at least know where you should be starting down the road of trying to figure out, what do I need to have in my bucket of skills when I walk in the door? That may be a good way to do it. And I think a lot of people don't think about how valuable that is. But in my career, I probably had, if I talk about the titles that I had or the jobs that I had, probably 12 to 15 jobs. It sounds like a lot, but through an entire IT career, you do move around quite a bit in IT. So you don't park yourself at a place and stay there 20 years with IT. You're usually moving on every few years. And for me, sometimes companies went away. Sometimes I had to find another job. Sometimes, things changed in where I was living. So there's always changes. But I went through probably 12 to 15 different jobs. At my first job, I didn't know anybody there. Still not sure how I got that job. But every other job after that, I knew at least one person, sometimes more, who were already working there. And when I walked in the door to the interview, I would say, oh, yeah, I know Charlie, known him for years from this thing that we did. So that can help you a lot when you're starting out, because that may be the thing that gets you moved up in the list of possibilities better than almost anything else. That's sort of a long-winded description of what I think about that. But does that help some?
That is extremely helpful. Thank you so much, Professor.
Good luck with that 902 exam. Let us know how it goes.
Will do.
Take care. Thanks for calling too. That's
Thank you.
Yep. That's always challenging, is knowing where to go with that. And it's interesting that once you get the experience, now you're good. Once you get that first job, now you're good. So it does come in handy. Let's go back to the phones. Thanks for holding. 415 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Maybe holding too long. Maybe on mute right now on the 415 area code. It gives you a nice beep noise whenever I pick up. Oh, there he is. See? Hi.
I was on mute.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Jeffrey from San Francisco.
Oh, welcome. What can we do for you?
Just a quick question. First of all, thank you for your videos. I passed my 901.
Excellent.
And unfortunately, last week I took the 902 and I failed it. I got a 680.
So close.
On that test, yeah. Yes, it was so close, yeah. So I was just wondering, I'm taking it this Friday again. I was just wondering if, do I expect the same questions, or is it going to be more harder, or for the 902?
Well, there'll certainly be more stress involved, if nothing else. It's going to be a completely different set of questions. CompTIA has an enormous pool of questions. So whenever you sit down and take the exam, you get a randomized set of questions pulled from that pool. So when you sit down again for this exam, you might not get any questions that are the same. They may be a completely different set of questions. I don't think it will be any more difficult than what you went through before. I think, in fact, now it might be a little bit easier for you, because now you kind of know what to expect. You've been through the 901, you've been through the 902. You know that CompTIA has a certain style of asking questions. You know that they have a certain way they expect you. So a lot of the things that are unknown when you've never taken one of the exams, you already know. You already know exactly how it's going to go. And you were so close last time I want to be
Yeah.
sure, and this is something I mentioned to a lot of people, even if you don't pass an exam, they give you a piece of paper when you're walking out the door that gives you a list of all of the sections where you got a question wrong. And did you happen to get that sheet of paper on your way out?
Yes, I did, actually.
Perfect. And I'm glad you did. And this is something I tell people is that when you walk out the door and you don't have that piece of paper, it is almost impossible to somehow get your hands on this information again. It is the responsibility of the testing center to have a working printer to be able to print this out. If you get to the front and they go, yeah, our printer's not working, you should say, well, I can't leave until I have this information. Is there another printer we can print it on? Should we call Pearson VUE because they're the ones that this organization is contracted to provide you the exam? Let's call Pearson VUE. Let's get their help desk on the phone. Let's figure out how to print it out because that's some valuable information. It not only is proof that if you pass, it's your proof that you passed. If you did not pass, there is valuable details on that piece of paper that will tell you exactly what you need to study. Now, when you look through that paper that you got, did you see the things that you missed? You go, oh yeah, that I could see that I missed those questions. Did it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I check all those. I got a lot of mistakes on that.
Well, that's at least now you know where to go. You know that, okay, I got this part good, but these things I should work on a little bit more. And you were only 20 points away. So you were so close. I would bet the second time through you're going to be fine. Is there something, is there a particular topic or particular thing you found in the exam that was more of a challenge than something else? Is there something in the way that you studied you think maybe I should have done that differently?
Well, kind of the question on the 902, it has something to do with network, and I'm not really good with like network stuff, so I have to focus on those.
There's not a lot of networking on there, but one of the things I tell people is the network touches everything. So if you're sitting in front of a computer, you're connected, anything with technology, there's a network there. So you are going to have to deal with a lot of networking questions for sure. And more hands-on can't hurt.
Yeah. All right. That's all my questions.
Thanks for calling, Jeffrey. Thanks, and we appreciate it. Good luck on that second time through. I bet you're going to do fine.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
That's always a challenge. There was an exam I took. I just could not pass it. It was back in the day, as they say, and it was on cabling. It was a wiring. But we're not talking about how many strands of wire are in an Ethernet cable. It was for people that were installing cable. And for some reason, I felt it was important for me to have this certification. And I took it 3 times before I ever passed it. It's one of those types of things. So you can do it. Second time through, you're going to be great. Let's go to the 281 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Mike.
Hello, Mike. What can we do for you?
Hey, I wanted to start by saying I love your videos, and your wireless standards video really helped me with the 802.11 protocols or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot to know there.
Yeah, and it really helped me, and I'd like to thank you for that because I got them down.
Excellent.
Because of you. But anyways, so I already passed my 902, and I was planning on taking my 901 pretty soon, and I was wondering what your advice might be for someone who can't really like get excited about learning about printers, because I don't really know about anything like how the way these things work on the inside, you know, and I want to learn, but I can't get excited about it.
Well, I can tell you from on behalf of the rest of the technical community, we have solidarity, my brother. Nobody likes printers. Nobody. The people who make printers don't like printers. It is one of these necessary evils. Now, here's the problem, and here's the thing that will make you very valuable to whatever employer gets you, is that if you can get an expertise in a particular printer, not just the printer and how it's printing, but the entire process, so that any question that comes up you can solve, you will be the king of the hill, because the people that need these printouts, you may not have met them yet, but you will. The people that need these printouts when the printer is not working, it is an issue of the utmost importance. The world will end unless we get this printout out of this laser printer. There will be human lives lost. There will be disasters that known to no one before. This will be the end. This will be apocalyptic unless we get this printout. And if you're someone who can make that happen, that urgency of getting that printout turns into praise for someone who's able to make these things dance and understand how they work and get the nuances. So it does seem a little crazy right now. And one of the things I recommend, somebody even put this right now in the chat room as I was thinking about it. If you've never worked with a dot matrix printer before, and there's just not a lot of them out there to work with, hit the YouTube. Look for dot matrix printers and have somebody explain them and really show you one in action and how they work on them. There's plenty of videos like this. Once you go through one with laser printers, dot matrix printers, and inkjet, I bet somebody who shows you 3 of those on YouTube really getting into them and performing a very detailed breakdown, you've got it from that point on. There was a great one I saw. I wish I could find it. I'll have to find it and tweet about it. One where someone completely took one apart. I mean, from the bottom out, and with each component was explaining, and here's what this little piece of plastic does. And it was remarkable. For me, it's much more information than you'd ever need to know for the exam. But it is something that, oh, well, that's what that's for. That's what that thing does. Became really valuable when you were trying to get a sort of a holistic view of the entire printer and how it operates. It really was remarkable. The good thing, though, although the exam seems, when you take it, like it's nothing but printer questions, the actual number of printer questions is a relatively small percentage. So thankfully, you've got all of your hardware stuff, all the ports and CPUs and memory things. You've got networking, which quite honestly would be overwhelming for a number of people. If you know networking well, that's a big chunk of the exam, and a lot of troubleshooting, which obviously printers are included with that, but there's a little bit of command line. There's a lot of hardware troubleshooting in that exam. So don't focus all of your time on the printers, but you should absolutely understand everything they're asking in those exam objectives. And I think getting some YouTube of people working with some of these hard to find printers, especially for someone if you've never stuck your head into a laser printer. A lot of people don't have a laser printer at home. So how are you supposed to understand what's going on? They can step you through it in the YouTube videos. That may be the thing that makes you understand that it's more fear of the unknown. And once you see the video, you're like, oh, well, that's it? Okay, I got it. Yeah, I think that's how you're probably going to come out of those once you look at them.
Well, I memorized the laser printing process, but I'm not sure. I think I need to dive a little bit deeper into it. What do you think?
One of the things that would be really nice, and I should probably do this on my next series of A+, is for each section of the laser printing process, here it is in the printer. Here's where the paper comes in. Here's the part where it's cleaned off, and you can actually see that part in the printer. I think maybe connecting those things together would be pretty valuable.
Yeah, and I'm a hands-on learner, so it's just difficult, just to rely on YouTube for these things.
Yeah, I think it helps too. But if you got a chance, and this is a good opportunity too, go up to your office supply, the Best Buy that's near you, and pop open a printer. And maybe tell even the techs that are there, pick a slow day and say, yeah, I'm studying for an exam. I just wanted to stick my head in one of these. They might even have some tips for you, like, oh, yeah, here's the drum. Here's where the toner goes in. Here's where it cleans off. They may be able to point some of those things out. And fortunately, you can do that with laser printers and inkjet printers. It's hard to find a dot matrix, though. That's going to be a sticking point, is finding those dot matrix printers. You have to go to the car rental desk at the airport and have somebody print out something in triplicate. That may be the best. People say the museum, there's more dot matrix out there than you may even realize. There's a ton of it out there. It's very niche, but you just suddenly you'll be if you're buying a car, there's going to be a dot matrix printer right there when you're buying that car, because that's what they print everything out on. It's remarkable. And that's why they're so important. knowing these technologies. People think they're outdated. No, how are you going to sell a car unless you have a dot matrix printer? That's crazy. How are you going to fly in a plane unless there's a dot matrix printer? Literally, they print things out on dot matrix printers before getting on the plane. So our entire airports would be empty if we didn't have dot matrix printers.
Well, I guess they're important.
And that's why you have to know them. People think that it's things that are on this exam that, why should I know dot matrix? Well, you'll know if you work for a car rental company. You will absolutely know.
Well, I appreciate your time, and keep doing what you're doing. You're really helping a lot of people, myself included.
Thanks, Mike. Best of luck on that 901. That's one of the challenges. He even did his backwards. I was going to ask him why he did his backwards, although it's not really backwards. You can do them in any order. It's very interesting to do that. Let's back to the calls. You've been holding so long. Thank you so much. 502 area code. What's your name? Where you're calling from?
Hello, sir. My name is Raj. I'm calling from Southern California.
Welcome, Raj.
I don't live in 502 area code anymore.
Well,
I live in 760.
That's what comes up on my screen. So I'm with you. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I grew up in Louisville.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was wanting to know. All right, and I know I'm sure maybe you remember me from a couple study groups ago, but I'm the one who raised a question about the performance-based exercises on the exam.
Yeah, I don't recall, but it hit me.
Okay. The performance-based questions, I found I passed a 902 on the second attempt.
Excellent.
And similar situation as the previous caller. I failed it by a margin. I passed it on the second attempt by a margin. So
you studied just the right amount, I like to say.
Exactly. Well, there's some other things, and I can mention before we end. But what I found that helped me over the 902 was being able to tackle the performance-based questions, because I got a hold of pretty much the exact practice questions that you're asked from another source. But I want to know, are there any such, I know you already mentioned this, but I got in a little late. Can you recommend a performance-based simulator? I didn't see whether you had posted that earlier, because I got in late on the lecture.
The only thing I've really seen, the only thing I really recommend people to do, and I don't necessarily recommend people to get their hands on brain dumps or to use some of the sample questions that are out on the internet because of that. I think the best way for someone to get through performance-based questions is to be able to have as much hands-on as possible. So I always recommend that people get a good book, they watch some videos, they do some Q&A, and they get some hands-on. And I think the hands-on is the thing that helps most people get through performance-based questions. Not all performance-based questions, for the people in the chat room, are quote-unquote simulations or something at a command line or something with a graphical screen. Some of the performance-based questions are just questions asking you how to put things in order or matching or fill in the blank. One of the things I recommend are the GTS Live Labs. On my website, for anybody who's listening, and you as well, Raj, when you go to the top of the website is a list of a pull-down menu of all of the different exams, the A+, the Network Plus, Security Plus, there's Microsoft, there's Cisco. You can click on A+, and at the very bottom of that is a list of A+ study resources. These are the study resources that I have used, that I recommend, that I like. They're the ones that if I was going to take an exam, that's what I would get. I don't just put anything in that list. It's not just a filled in with tons of Amazon links. These are things that I either have used or have worked with and I like. And I especially like the people who represent those products. So I don't also pick products that are from places where I don't think you would be happy with the service you got. I love all the people that have these live labs and the GTS learning. They've always been great. So on there are some GTS Learning Live Labs, and the link gives you the best price. It gives you the Professor Messer price rather than the GTS Learning price. So it's built into that as well. So that might be something to look at to see, okay, I can work in Vista and Windows 7 and Windows 8, and here's Linux, and I can now do some hands-on with these real systems and run through some labs that are already set up to be able to perform the things that are in the exam objectives.
Okay. So basically, it's not necessarily something where you'll have to demonstrate you can put a system together using the right components for the right specifications and things like that. It'll be, again, theory, but it won't be a multiple choice. It'll have to be something you have to type in, or
I put an example of some performance-based questions on my pop quiz collection in my books. It's not interactive. You can't grab, the mouse in my book and move things around, but I have questions that are very similar to things you might get on the exam. One of the things I recommend to people on the 901 is there's such an emphasis in hardware. If you go to Google and you type in motherboard, it shows you, and then you choose image as your Google image search. It shows you pages and pages of motherboards. And I tell people you should be able to grab a motherboard out of this list of images, and you should be able to point at all of the different components on the motherboards and name them. That's a good example of a typical performance-based question. One of the advantages you have there is if it's in Google, then there's probably a link to the manufacturer's page. And if you go to the manual of any motherboard, they have a block diagram that shows you here's where the memory is, here's where the CPU is, here's where the video controller is, here's where the audio controller is, here's where the SATA ports are, and you can really go through the whole motherboard and then check what you did based on what's there. It's a good example of something that you can use to help understand, do I know that portion of the exam? And that doesn't cost anything.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And port numbers are coming up on this 901 exam.
Oh,
right?
yes. And all big networking section.
All right. And
but by the way, a lot of people don't realize CompTIA tells you exactly what port numbers you should know. I've seen people studying from big pages of 100 port numbers, so they would know these port numbers. You don't have to. They already tell you in the exam objectives. So make sure you've got the exam objectives, and they limit it to this certain group of protocols.
Yeah, when I Wikipedia port numbers, and then it had like maybe 20 established ports, and then there were like about 100 of those things that were like unestablished ports that are just like open port numbers. And
there's only 65,000 to choose from, so why not?
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm a penny wiser, I guess. Pound foolish, but another one last question is when it comes to stuff that was covered in the 902 exam, could there be a repetition in the 901, or is could we be seeing still some command line stuff in the 901 or anything like that?
In fact, what you find in the 900 series exams, this has not been this way in the past. So if you're looking at older books or other older study guides, they might tell you that there's a lot of overlap between the two. But now what CompTIA has done is really separated them out quite nicely, and the content that's in 901 is now very separate. If I had to draw a Venn diagram, the two circles are really not interlocking very much between those two exams. You might find the most amount of overlap in some of the troubleshooting questions you might get on the 902, but there is almost nothing from the 902 on the 901 exam. So you won't see a whole lot of overlap between them. Stick to the exam objectives for the 901. Don't worry about what's in the 902, and take the 901 exam and do the same thing for the 902 exam.
Right. And like I said, what killed me the first attempt of 902 was the performance-based. So I totally messed up on doing the bootrec.exe, and putting it into the recovery command line.
Well, these
So, like,
you have to
I've
know
watched
boot
that.
rec. You have to
And,
know
yeah.
all of those command lines from the 902, and there's a ton of
Right.
command lines on the 902, not just for Windows, but for Linux, for Mac OS. You have to know all of them because you could be asked for anything.
That's right. And also the MS config.
Well, one of the things that, and I will remind you, by the way, on the exams, is that everybody before you take the exam have to sign a candidate agreement to be able to do that. And when that candidate agreement says that you won't discuss technically anything about the exam. So you also have to watch that whenever you're talking with other people, because unfortunately we're just not able to say anything about what the questions might be on the exam.
Right. I forgot. And they're probably going to change the exam completely now.
Well, one of the things you can bet, and one of the things I find, is that they do update the questions from time to time. So a lot of times people walk into the exam and see things they weren't expecting unless they study from the exam objectives. And of course, we are expecting a new set of exams probably at the end of the year, December timeframe. So if anything, you'll probably see some then, certainly.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
And you have 1 hour left, right? Yeah, you have 1 hour left to go, right?
Well, I probably at this point, until the phone lines will stop anyway, until my voice gives out.
Okay.
Thanks for
all right.
Thanks for calling. Appreciate it, sir.
Bye.
One of the things that I've always tried to figure out with working through performance-based questions is you just never know what you're going to get. You never know what those questions are going to turn into. So it's more about understanding not just what's in the exam objectives, but how those things apply to troubleshooting, to installing, to whatever the context is in those exam objectives. And that's why if they say, understand how to replace the head that's in a dot matrix printer, we can talk about how to do it. It's much better if you can see someone do it and understand why it's important and how you would make that happen. Those are the things I think on performance-based questions that tend to help an awful lot. Back to the phones. And one of our last holding forever calls. Thank you so much. 818 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, Mr. Professor. Hi, my name is Drew. I emailed you yesterday. And thank you so much for your amazing videos. You're a guardian angel. I swear.
You're quite welcome, sir.
And so I'm just a brand new, so to say, fresh off the boat. I got my bachelor's in aviation admin. I couldn't, quite frankly, get a job in that field. That's why I said, let me just switch around and study. And I found that the IT industry is kind of growing. And
yeah,
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about cybersecurity, and kind of wanted to see what's your path on that.
Sure.
And I had a question about there are a couple of books at this CompTIA, there is CCNA. I want to know what the differences is and which path I should go, and if I can get it, because I know the books get renewed each year. I wanted to know if I buy the older version, will it be the same, or I don't have to be current and get a newest version?
Gotcha. Well, let's start with talking about what they call today cybersecurity. This is a term that probably has gotten very popular, but it's really talking about IT security, really talking about the scope of security and keeping data safe. And as someone who worked directly in I guess what could be called now the cybersecurity industry, I worked as a systems engineer at Network Associates. I specialized in antivirus at the time, proxy-based firewall with Gauntlet. That was a time when security the growth of security, really the internet in general, that's when everything was sort of blowing up, and went from there to Palo Alto Networks, where I worked with a systems engineer for this next generation firewall. So I got to visit all of these enormous companies see their enormous data centers and really work on planning and implementing some of the latest security technologies for these organizations. These are companies you would absolutely know if we were going to name names. So it was interesting to also talk to the people that work there and find out where they came from. I started in IT. One of my jobs before those two was working with protocol analyzers, with working with packets on the network, tons of networking. I just did lots and lots of networking. I love it. I love networking. And what I found, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it, when I got into doing more security, all of the people that I worked with from the network side were now working in security. And it makes perfect sense. When you're integrating security technologies, you're typically integrating them into major parts of the network. Setting up VPNs between sites deals specifically with firewalls and connecting those to a site across the internet, dealing with routing protocols and dealing with network address translation, and having to deal with the intricacies of applying the security on top of that. The same thing if you need to implement an intrusion prevention system. The same thing if you need to install a firewall. Well, do you install one firewall? Do you install two firewalls? Are they high availability? Are they active-active or active-passive? Do we install them at layer 3? Do we install them at layer 1? Do we install them at layer 2? There's so many different options. All of those questions are really networking questions. We haven't even gotten to the security part of the firewall. We're just trying to implement it into the organization. So that's why I always tell people, if you're interested in getting involved with cybersecurity, as we're calling it these days, get as much of a foundation in networking as you can. It will help you every step of the way with IT security, because a huge amount of what you're doing is going to be working on the network. And I think you're thinking that way too, because you mentioned getting some Cisco certifications, which is a great idea. A lot of people will get a Network Plus. That's where they'll start. They'll take their knowledge from Network Plus and apply that to a Cisco CCNA or the other Cisco certifications or CCNP. And those are great places to start, because then you not only get the knowledge of how this works at a theoretical level, you then get to implement it at a technical level by actually installing the router, installing the switch, making them all work together, making them all send routing protocols to each other, having high availability, doing the load balancing. All of those things, you're not just learning what they are, but how to type those things in at the command line. And that way, when you're ready to get into security and somebody says, oh, but we need to implement a routing protocol. Well, I'll set that up for you. I got it. I got routing protocols. I already been doing that forever. That's how it helps when you finally get down to the security side of things. And that's how when I usually recommend things to people wanting to get into security, I always say, don't forget about the network, because that's going to be a huge part of what you do.
I see. Thank you. And then as far as the book goes, if I get, does it matter if I go with the CompTIA or the CCNA? I mean, with the Cisco version, or do they put a difference?
They are completely different certifications. The Network Plus is a completely different certification from the closest thing you could find on the Cisco side is the CCENT. Those are completely different certification exams. Much of the content between them is very similar, but the scope of the exams are very, very different. If you know you're going to go into Cisco, you know that's where you're going, you might even want to start with the CCENT and not take the Network Plus. But I think a lot of people prefer taking the Network Plus, so when they jump into the Cisco, they're not suddenly inundated with everything from the very beginning of networking and then having to apply all the Cisco command lines on top of that. Being able to take that huge chunk of networking foundation and then move into the Cisco, I think helps a lot of people. It's really up to you. Grab the exam objectives for both of them, have a look through them so that you understand what's there, and you'll get a better idea of which one might fit best for you. You had also talked about buying books and getting study materials. As long as your study materials match the number of the exam, you're fine. So if you're looking for a Network Plus book, the current Network Plus exam is the N10006. That's an exam that's been around for about 3 years. It's an exam that really still applies today. They really didn't have to change the exam very much ever from that. I think you'd still be good. And indeed, you're still probably going to be able to take the N10006 for another 6 or 7 months. So you should get your books and study materials to match the exam number of the exam you plan to take. So as long as those match up, you're going to do fine.
All right. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the call.
help.
Absolutely, sir. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
That's one of the things I think that people get into. I've seen people right now, you could take the SY0401 Security Plus exam or the SY0501 Security Plus exam. And people will ask me, which one should I take? I don't care. The SY0401 is going to be retired in July. So if you think you can get it done before July, then you can choose either of those. If it was me, I would probably take the 501 because I know in my world every day, am I going to be able to study and have everything ready by July? I don't even know. I'm that guy. It takes me forever to study for an exam. So I would probably take the 501. Some people are saying, no, I need to take this next week or next month or in the next 2 months. And I'll say, well, the 401's got the most amount of content out there right now. Maybe that's what you want to consider doing. Doesn't matter which one you take, you get exactly the same certification, which is really the most important part. And you're never going to take the exam again of any kind, of any version. Once you get your exam and you pass it, you're just going to update that certification every 3 years anyway. So you probably should not be taking that exam ever again. I think most people would not. Back to the phones. 331 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
From Chicago.
Welcome.
Hey, welcome. Well, thank you for all your service. Really appreciate watching all your videos.
Welcome, sir.
I just took the 901 on Saturday and came up, I think, 2 questions short from passing, so I'm going to take it pretty soon now.
So close.
I just have a couple. The wireless encryption standards. I'm just wondering, what would you recommend for reviewing on that? I feel like that's an area that I'm weak on, and I did get that printout sheet back. I already lost it, but don't worry. I put it on all my wrong ones on a Google sheet as soon as I got it. So
nice.
I'm looking at that.
I take pictures of everything. As soon as somebody gives me a receipt, click, I got it. Now I can't lose it. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. It's really helpful.
I would recommend actually jumping over to my Security Plus videos, which were done a month ago. They are the latest version of these. There's a little bit of overlap from the A+, because quite honestly, wireless encryption is wireless encryption. But every time I update a course, I'm not simply copying and pasting. I'm also making some changes based on the feedback that I get. And that's probably the latest set that I like the most. And I say this because I'm also working on the Network Plus update, which will also have wireless encryption in it. And that's the one I'm actually liking the most right now because I made more changes to it. I can't leave it alone. But the 501 Security Plus that's on my website is the latest set of videos. And I tried to break out WEP. Actually, it may not even be WEP in 501, but I really try to break out WPA and WPA2 with those separate protocols so that you can see the difference in the CCNP versus all of the other options that you have available. I think the Security Plus exam also does a better job of separating out encryption from authentication, because authentication deals with the EAP and variants of EAP, and I broke those out into separate videos. So that might help with your logic in your brain as to what building blocks work with other things, because a lot of people think that WPA2 and LEAP are somehow intermixed, but in reality, those are two different things handling different parts of the equation.
Okay, that sounds great. And then just another quick question.
Sure.
The Soho wireless router section, I think I didn't do as well on that as well. Is there any other sections from your, other than, cause I think I've watched all your videos for 901. Is there any other sector like what you just suggested with Security Plus? That's
a big video with a lot of topics in it. And a lot of it is about configuring a wireless router. And if you have a wireless router at home, what you may find is a number of the features they ask you about may not be in the wireless router that you are using. One of the things you can do is there are a number of wireless router emulators out on the internet. Remarkably, a lot of these are from the companies that make the wireless routers themselves. So if you type in wireless router emulator into the Google machine, you'll get so many different options. And don't go with the options that are things you don't recognize. Go to D-Link, go to Netgear, go to Linksys. They've got all of these different emulators. I'm on the D-Link WPR 1310, where I can click on the advanced link and now start doing things like putting in port forwarding rules. Okay, well, now I can take scenarios and start putting them into this emulator. I won't break my internet. I won't even break anybody else's internet. It's all an emulator, and I can mess around with this and try to find here in the D-Link, here's how I would do port forwarding, application rules, network filtering, website filtering, firewall settings. Well, now let me go over to Netgear and see if I can find the same stuff and see how it works, and then start getting a little more hands-on with those environments so that when they ask you questions about network address translation and configuring the encryption and setting up all of these port forwarding rules, you'll know exactly how it's done.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir. Best of luck.
Oh, you the same.
That's one of those that is sort of a hidden little bit of information out there with those emulators. It really does come in handy. Sometimes I'll be talking with someone I know who calls me because they think I know things technically and say, I'm having a problem with this router and this thing. I go, I haven't touched that router before. Let me go find it online. And sure enough, I'll find an emulator for that specific router. And I'll tell them on the phone, okay, go down to this list, click on this thing, see where it says that, put in that number, and then we're up and running. So sometimes that can be useful as well. And in the chat room, people are finding other emulators as well. And you can find not just the things you would have at home, like with a Soho router, like with a Linksys and with a Netgear and with D-Link, but you can find enterprise access point and routers as well with those. So you can find a lot of that out there. So make sure you take advantage of those things that are out there on the internet. That might really help you whenever you work through those details. Well, we've come to the end of my voice, which you may not be able to realize, but I've been drinking warm beverages on this side to try to stay up. I think we've also come to the end of the phones as well. So I want to probably the best place to stop for what we're doing. But thank you for being here. We went through an entire hour of Q&A, went through almost an hour on the phone lines. And one of the things that I would not be able to do these without your assistance, without you being here and participating. So thank you so much for joining us. Next week, don't forget, same time, same place. We've got on Wednesday of next week is the Network Plus study group. And the week after that's the Security Plus study group. You can always check the events calendar on the Professor Messer website for more details on that. We've got plenty of other things I'm working on behind the scenes too. There's a lot of activity right now. So make sure you check out all the newest Security Plus videos. We've got more Network Plus happening, and who knows what's going to happen with A Plus later on this year. It's going to be a good year. 2018 is going to be excellent. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.